And like if you're talking about nitrogen, well, you can't go cold turkey on nitrogen. You've got to earn the right to use less.
Yeah.
So you've got to put a few things in place first, like like your cover crops and that, and then you can pull back, and then when you're confident, then you can do a little bit more.
Yeah, because you're improving that nutrient cycling capacity of the paddock to actually cycle nitrogen efficiently and effectively, which is
and I think if you concentrate on getting your trace elements lined up and your pH and soil biology happening, and then then you can slowly pull back.
The Biological Farming Roundtable podcast helps farmers explore innovative, low-input, regenerative and profitable farming systems. The Biological Farming Roundtable is sponsored by Nutrisoil, an award-winning biological liquid fertiliser made from a big worm farm. Nutrisoil's purpose is to empower farmers to produce life-enriching food. My name is Nakala Maddock. I work at Nutrisoil. I envisage a future where farmers are rewarded for producing nutrient-rich foods and consumers have this easily available to them.
Hello everyone, Nakala here from Nutrisoil. I'm here in the wet tropics in Queensland. I have David Hardwick from Soilland Food with me, and we are here with Ray Zamora, who is from Tully in the wet tropics in Queensland. Tully is known as the wettest town in Australia, and Ray farms, he's a cane farmer in the area, 4 metres of rainfall annually a year. Welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Oh, thanks for having us, Nakala.
Yeah, thanks.
Today there's a few things we wanted to talk about. Firstly, the history of the cane industry. So there's been a big concentration on the industry for a number of years now. And there's been steps through that, so we'll talk about that. But I also want to talk about the reason we're here, and it's the Regenerative Cane Farming Forum. It's our the 3rd year running the forum, so we'll talk about that, and also your reason, Ray, as to why you thought that soil health was important and what made you start. So
it's all about money, wasn't it, Ray? You're a millionaire.
All about the money. Yeah.
Lots to talk about, but look, let's just start about the industry first. Why did the cane industry become so focused on?
Back in the 90s, there was a sugar yield decline joint venture with the government and SRA.
So pretty much they identified that yields were declining across the industry nationally, and they wanted to work out why.
After that joint venture there, the biggest constraints were soil compaction, soil pathogens,
Soil-borne diseases, and carbon.
And lack of carbon in our soils.
Yeah, so it was pretty much a national project looking at why yields of cane across all different soil types, all different climate zones was declining, and the farming system had led to these 3 major soil constraints. So the industry knew it had to do something different. They came up with best practices, I guess, Ray, would be the way you'd describe it.
And a lot of the practices were in the old days, like they used to plant their legume crops all the time because
back in
knew
before the 80s and deregulation.
Before that last generation, they knew that they had to grow a fallow crop, and possibly even 2 years was better, and we sort of forgot all about that for a while. And
I guess there was a push for production,
just concentrated on putting out fertiliser.
Yeah.
So the industry saw these declining yields, the issue with soil carbon, fungal disease. What was the next step?
The next step was control of traffic. It was just getting a bit of traction, and a lot of growers moved to slightly wider row spacings.
Control of traffic, so there's not compaction over the whole paddock all the time. But it was a slow change.
Very slow transition, and planting soybeans and stuff in the fallows on beds, and Greenshaws in the Burdekin with the cutting edge of all that technology at the time.
I guess the challenge, Nakala, with cane is it's a monoculture crop, and even from the early days of the industry, in the early last century, the guys knew they needed to have a rotation, and often legumes were part of that rotation, but kind of got lost somewhere in that late 20th century push for production. So there was this recommendation to bring back some diversity, even if it's just one legume crop in the 5 or 6 year cycle of cane, being a monoculture generally is a perennial grass. So
Probably we need to explain how cane is grown. Like, it is a perennial grass. How long is it a perennial grass for, and what's your opportunities to put in these cover crops?
Yeah, well, cane, we cut it every year. It keeps returning. The sort of industry standard is 4 returns, and then a fallow. Got a block now. It's going to go 17th return this year.
17?
Yeah,
17 years.
So it's been a long time since it's had a fallow crop in it. Yeah.
What was your reason for keeping it so long?
Yeah, it was a good block on a high bit of the farm, but didn't get affected by water as such.
How's it yielding?
It yielded 115 to the hectare last year. So
that's all right.
but the grass is starting to get a bit of a grip on it.
Yeah.
And I've been threatening for about 5 years to knock it out,
Yeah.
but it just keeps pumping.
Makes money.
We
Yeah.
cut it in the wet, we give it a hard time, and it just keeps coming back. So, like the program for it this year, I'll cut it early and knock it out, and I've got to rip the whole paddock up and change the rows and whatnot. So it'll get there's a mill byproduct on it, and a mixed species cover crop, and hopefully rejuvenate it, and then it'll be good for another 17 years.
Another 17. But the industry average is 4 to 7.
Yeah, around that.
Generally, I mean, the thing, it's a perennial grass, Nakala, so if you give it a chance to build a root system, it can come back year after year, and give you reasonable production. But the challenge the guys had was with the bigger machinery and the more intense farming from the 90s, 80s and 90s, was they started to get this severe compaction. So the cane ran out of puff because it doesn't have the root reserves to come back each year. That's the big challenge. So within a couple of years, it's just not giving you any production. It's uneconomic, so you have to turn it in. But you kind of get caught on that cycle, really, because if you're doing more intensive paddock work every few years, you're compounding your problems.
Yeah, and like our plant cane is our biggest crop. First return is not far behind the plant cane, and then you can see it quickly drop off in the next few returns if you haven't got things in order.
I imagine in 4 metre rainfall, you would have been one of the first to take up controlled traffic. Did you jump onto it pretty early? And was it farmer driven? Like, was there any help, or people really needed to invest quite large amounts to change their system?
We didn't invest too much. We had to change all our implements, widen them out a little bit and whatnot. And the government helped by getting contractors grants to get GPS on their planting gear. So we paid the contractors to set our farms up originally. Later on down the track, we've got our own gear, of course, but initially, it was just the contractors. They were the only ones viable enough to buy this gear.
Have the gear,
Yeah.
So that was this big first step, was dealing with compaction, and controlled traffic was pretty clear. Other industries had already been doing it, and stuff. So you kind of knew, you guys knew.
Yeah.
That's a big step
for us.
to
It was
take.
a no-brainer
Yeah.
when you draw it out on the cement in the shed.
Yeah.
And see where your tyres are running,
Yeah.
were running, and where they're gonna run. And it's just like, this is. My dad used to always tell me, well, you run the risk of growing more cane.
Yeah.
You got less compaction.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
In the traditional narrow rows, I don't know, must be close to 80% compaction.
So for your old man, what was the risk of growing more cane if you're under an allocated system? Was it a problem to have too much cane, or did it come back to bite you?
No, it was all good. More
was better.
More tons per hectare, the better.
Yeah.
So
you, like, that compaction side of things was becoming pretty clear, and you guys were trying to tackle that. And then you were sort of, I guess, thinking more about your soil, and you had a bit of an epiphany at one point to sort of go beyond the compaction part of the story. What happened?
Yeah, well, we had to go look after the compaction first, because remembering that we're in a 4 metre rainfall area, and we get a fair bit of that in the wet season, but we can get a fair bit in the harvest season. And we have got flotation harvesting equipment, tractor harvesters and big haul outs with big flotation tyres, and we have to push on in the wet, in not so beautiful conditions sometimes.
Yeah.
So
You're saying flotation tyres because it's so wet? Like,
yeah.
Wow.
Not as to float in water.
I'm just trying to get my head around
To float
this.
on the
So it's harvesting.
in the mud.
Okay.
And
Right from the tyre shop, the mud terrain fellas. Yeah,
Okay.
So Tully's always been a leader in harvesting equipment because of that reason, and we're not not scared to have a go in the wet, because we know that the consequences of cutting later into the season are worse than cutting it early, and so we'll have a go in Tully.
Yeah.
So that was probably where we started off there, and then it's my turn to step up and run the family farm. So started off, I thought I knew a fair bit. I'd worked on cane farms all my life. I'd been to ag college, and thought, this is easy. And then one day I'm there spraying along, doing a brain dead job that it is, and I started thinking about the soil for some reason. I thought, I don't know anything about this soil really. I know they tell me to put this fertiliser on and whatnot, and I thought, you put this seed in the ground and that plant grows, and another seed, and I thought, how's it do all this? So I went home and I looked up Mr. Google back in the day and typed in soil health, and all this wonderful knowledge came at me, and I just was unbelievable. Like a light bulb went off in my head, all right.
Whole new world opened up.
Yeah.
It's more than just the physics of the soil, the structure and things. There's this other dimension, this biological dimension to it.
Yeah. And I went and talked to our local industry about it, and they really didn't want to know about it at that stage.
But the cane industry knew a lot about soil biology from all that research around the yield decline, because they'd explored soil-borne diseases, and they kind of knew there was beneficials and baddies in there. So they'd actually done quite a lot of work on it, really, in a way.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the practical knowledge or focus was.
Yeah, they sort of weren't promoting it at all.
Yeah.
They just sort of said, don't worry about that stuff too much.
Yeah.
Just keep doing
Even
what
though
you
we
do.
know soil-borne diseases are a key constraint.
Yeah.
But you were determined to learn more.
Yeah. So from there, being on Google, and once you start listening to Dr. Elaine Ingham and Gabe Brown and the likes, it's just absolutely mind blowing. I don't know if anyone will ever know all there is to know about the sport. It's just
But interesting, you're a cane farmer, but you're still, listening to a cropping farmer or, someone that is in the States. Like, it's just...
Well, we're all working with soil. It's all the same. Sand, silt and clay.
Yeah.
And organic.
Different.
And organic. Yeah.
Different percentages in different parts of the world, but it's basically the same.
Yeah. And before we were saying that the die-hard biological farmers, they were limited to books, and books are wonderful, and there was these big bookshelves of biological farming, but now the YouTube has just opened it up, and we can learn so much more on the internet, so it's done a really good thing for regenerative.
Yeah.
Thanks for the plug in podcasts.
Yeah.
For regenerative farming.
No, I mean, it's the way we all learn. If I was just reading a book on humans learning, and when people get joined up thinking it's cool, when people learn collectively, it speeds up learning. And they're arguing now that, or this author's arguing now, that the speed of evolution of human culture is faster than our genetics, because of it's overtaken the biological constraint of us into this cultural. So it's actually, and it's only been in the last decade or so, because of this, just the speed of collective learning is out jumping our genes, basically. So
it's not just our community, we can learn from people all over the world so quickly.
Adapt it to the local. So obviously, Ray, you had to sort of bring back some of those ideas and try and make them fit to your place.
Yeah, yep. And you had to be careful who you spoke to, as in local farmers or farmers in different districts, about biological farming, because some of them will look at you sideways and think you had two heads, and others will embrace you and want to talk about it.
Yeah, Ray's gone hippie.
Ray's
gone hippie.
But and then I found out there was a hell of a lot of growers that were same like-minded as me, thinking outside the square, and so everyone's had a light bulb moment.
Hello, sorry, we were just interrupted by a python that came from the cane field, so we've got Alan now here who sorted it out for us, and we're going to resume our podcast again. I may be shaking a little, but it should be okay. Alan, we were just talking about the whole cane industry, and Ray was telling us about the decline in soil health and the things that had happened, and we're talking now about the steps from it. Ray had a light bulb moment, the importance of soil health, and got on YouTube and found all of the amazing information, and then he started connecting with people, and I imagine he connected with you.
Yeah, eventually. It
Took a while.
took a while, yeah. And How do I put it? Networking is probably one of the key drivers of soil health, because you don't really know what you don't know. So when you first start on the journey, you think you know a lot, and gradually it dawns on you know very little. And then as you network with people, it's a change of ideas, change of people have tried different things. And one of the things the more I've done, is notice we're a niche environment. From Ingham to Mossman is a very niche climate. Nowhere else in Australia has that climate. It's a very narrow coastline, and what works somewhere else doesn't work here, and vice versa, because of our rainfall, humidity.
I guess, Alan, on that point, you get, even though it's the wet tropics, so it's very unique from that point of view, and cane farming is a unique farming system too. You know, it's got its industry challenges, but then I guess the third thing is just that seasonal changes in the wetter and drier things each year. You get that rainfall variability, which throws the whole span in the works too. That'd be an extra layer on top of that. In terms of, especially like Ray talking about it a little bit earlier today, about making decisions and timing of harvest affecting your soil health and crop preparation and cover crop strategies, that all gets affected.
Yep.
But when the rain falls, how much falls, all those things come into it.
So the communication, the networking, getting together, how long did that happen before the first Regen Cane Farming Forum came about?
Well, we probably started to network a bit with Project Catalyst L, which is a project we're involved with the government, WWF and Coca-Cola sponsor it too.
Yeah. For me, probably the first networking came when I did Digging Deeper with David. I don't know how long ago was that, Dave?
2015, I reckon. We went through that second year.
Yes, that's 8 years ago.
And you did it together?
No,
Ray
separate.
he didn't do it. But there was already a network of the guys like Ray, because you guys had been making bioferts for a bit.
Yeah.
So there's a few guys that were doing a few things, and then a few guys went through the soil program.
There's nothing growers like more than talking to other growers.
And being
they trust other growers, because they're talking dollars. Like, they're not going to do it if it's going to burn them. Yeah. So they love talking to growers.
Being on someone's farm, and being open what's happening and seeing what's actually happening in the soil. And I think a soil pit opened my eyes. Like, everyone should do a soil dig, because it's not how you think it is when you dig down. And everyone's different. On every farm, if you dug 10 soil pits, that can be all completely different. In the tropics anyway.
So you've developed this community. You've got your no-till controlled traffic happening,
which is a really important first step.
Yeah.
Without roots and air, it's hard to do anything else really.
It was really the big turnaround, that controlled traffic to start with, and then we're talking about biology. So you recognise that balanced biology is going to be one of the drivers for working on the pathogens that they found. What support did you get there with the biology?
Well, support from industry was zilch, I suppose.
Yeah, you're right.
Just probably from terrain. Started off doing some work with Kim Cruz, making bioferts and stuff. Terrain introduced me to that, and that opened my eyes up a bit more again.
So you guys started, you and a few other guys like Mario, who passed away and stuff, you guys started to make some biofertilizers, fermented biofertilizers.
Yeah.
So trying to add biology back into the system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're probably flying a little bit blind as far as in the cane. We didn't know a lot about what we were doing, but all the stars lined up, so we thought it sounds good.
Give it a crack, yeah. And it wasn't too expensive.
No, and we could do it ourselves. And that worked well. And then we mixed species cover crops come along, and it's another whole new world again, and everything complements itself.
So I guess there was a couple of pioneers, if you like, that were testing the water with that biodiversity cropping. With diversity cropping, you had Lawrence DeBella up here in the Ingham area, and Simon Matson, obviously at Mackay, was done his Nuffield scholarship, and that kind of gave you guys a bit of a window into a new thing to try.
Yep, and there's not much more to go. We don't know.
Well, that's so true because I don't know how many years ago we would say, but you would not know of a multi-species crop. It just wasn't in our heads. We hadn't even thought of it. Where now it's quite common practice with many people and it's growing and growing. So what's next? There'll be something we haven't thought of, won't there?
Yeah, there's something right around the corner.
I'm offering naked at night one for you.
No one's taken it up, David.
It's hard. I want to come back to the diversity cropping a bit. Like, do you remember the first multi-species paddock you planted, Ray?
Yeah, I did. I had to go a long time ago now, probably 12, 13 years ago. I did just sorghum Sudan and cowpeas.
Yep.
And I just slashed it down 3 times.
Yep.
And it kept coming back.
Yep.
Yeah, and then when I planted the cane there, that cane grew bloody nice.
Yeah, right. So that was just a two-way mix.
Yeah.
That you slashed down a couple of times.
Yeah.
And you saw that immediate and some agronomic benefit.
Yeah.
Following crop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was still working the ground fairly conventional then,
Yeah.
and it still showed a good response.
Yeah. How about you, Alan? What
one of the big hurdles for me was there were strategies out there and ideas, but we didn't have the capacity or the machinery to implement them because of our trash blanket and massive trash blanket.
So
we couldn't
after harvest.
Yeah,
There's a lot of trash on the paddock.
a lot of trash, like 3 or 4 times what anyone else would have to deal with.
Yeah. Can you show me a?
Oh, when you first cut it, it can
Yeah,
be 150 mil thick.
Okay.
A very, very high carbon mix.
Yeah, you have to manage that, and a strategy where you can incorporate and plant a crop reasonably quick and cheaply because it's just a mix you're going to put back into the soil for soil health. You want to do it the best possible price. It's still, you have to be economical when you're doing it. You can't just throw money at something. The strategies to do that and machinery to do it wasn't really there, and that was a problem for me. We were still trying to do conventional,
So you guys
bring the new world.
You guys had to cook some new machinery up,
Yes.
basically, which is the bed renovator. Which if
Yeah.
you haven't seen the bed renovator, then they're for sale on the website now. But it's taken off across the region, really.
Yes.
Which Alan developed mostly.
Yeah, Alan, you were instrumental.
Necessities of Mother of Invention. And
Yeah, well,
it was a problem and he found the answer.
but it didn't come in 1 year. Like, it was developed over probably 5 or 6 years or
But
more.
it's what you might call it a gentle soil like gentle tillage, basically. It helps keep your aggregation.
It's softer cultivation.
Yeah.
I'd class it as.
Yeah.
So you can sow in.
Yes, so you can sow in.
Yeah.
And sugar industry, we have a major compaction problem. And we all know in soil health, the number one enemy is compaction. You can't get the other balance right without dealing with it. And that was an issue. How do you go in and break the hard pan and assist the plants to break up the compaction? That was one of the issues.
Because the plants will do a lot of the work for you, but you do have to give them a helping hand to get started.
Controlled, sensible tillage.
Yes.
Controlled, sensible tillage, CST. They put that on the caps.
Yeah. And one of the things I had trouble initially, I always thought, once you put a ripper through something, it broke the compaction. Well, it's only breaking the hard pan, and then your plants come along, and your biology is actually what breaks compaction.
Or what creates good aggregation.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
Which is that second part of structure. Like one part's a hard pan, the second part is good aggregation.
Yeah.
So the renovator's used just before you sow.
Yes, and at the end of the season to help terminate the crop and get rid of compaction, and then just before you plant, you renovate.
Sugarcane is a very hard crop to kill.
Yes.
It's hard to grow at times, but it's very hard to kill too.
Perennial grass. Yeah.
Tropical
Ray,
plant.
you have a crimper roller with disc seeder behind it. Did you make that, or how did that? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I just copied the crimper roller off the internet, of course.
Copyright.
And I've done some direct drilling straight into cover crops, and I've had mixed results. Sometimes I have had a complete failure. but I've had really good results and mediocre results. It always comes away very slowly as compared to a conventional drill plough. And
So that's direct drilling into a crimped cover crop.
yeah, and even
Takes a bit of time.
Double disc opening in sugarcane tends to be a lot slower.
yeah, but in
Germination.
the end, it makes it.
Yeah.
I don't know, it catches up.
Yeah. As long as you don't, severe weather is the problem
Mm.
when it's slow to establish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If it sets it back for the rest of the cycle,
Yeah.
you can be in trouble. Or vice versa, though, if you get a ordinary time towards the end of the season, it might still be puffing along, come through that. So I guess really the challenge you guys have had here, implementing sort of more soil health friendly practices and making money at the same time, is you had to pull together a number of different sort of changes and make it all work in a package deal, really, isn't it? That's been the challenge with all the external climate and industry issues as well. But do you think you're at the point now, you guys have been on this sort of journey, a bit more regenerative approach for a few years now, it's still profitable for you? You're still not compromising yield and or profit? Ray, what's your thoughts on that? You've still got to feed the family?
no, our profits are a bit variable at times in the sugar industry, but yeah, at the moment it's had a good year last year, and definitely no reduction in yield.
Yeah. But definitely an improvement in soil structure, as you know.
Yeah,
Being the
Yeah.
colour of being your paddock and
like if you're talking about nitrogen, well, you can't go cold turkey on nitrogen. You've got to earn the right to use less.
Yeah.
So you've got to put a few things in place first, like like your cover crops and that, and then you can pull back, and then when you're confident, then you can do a little bit more.
yeah, because you're improving that nutrient cycling capacity of the paddock to actually cycle nitrogen
Yeah.
efficiently and effectively, which is
Yeah,
what
and I think if you concentrate on getting your trace elements lined up and your pH and soil biology happening, and then then you can slowly pull back.
Yeah.
I don't know, in the sugar industry, I don't think we can ever pull back to
super low rates.
super low rates. But if we can pull back to if we could use 80 kilos, 60, 80, and
compared to your rainfall zone.
120, 140 units is sort of industry standard practice.
Yeah.
I think and maintain yields. That's crucial to maintain yields. If we don't supply enough cane to make the mill viable, well,
and this is such a big part of cane, isn't it? Like, you can go regen and you can do a lower input, lower output model, which a lot of farm business systems do outside of cane. But if you go too low output, the mill could be unviable, which means all the jobs in the region will go, a lot of the jobs.
Yeah.
So it's all connected to the processing side to it too.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're all in it together.
Yeah. So that does make it challenging, because you do get grazing systems that they will go lower output, low input, low. They're quite profitable, but
Because
they don't have the
ultimately it's the gross margin that we're after.
Yeah.
But and I think you probably could get the same gross margin with very low input costs and very average yields, but
you'd be trucking the cane to Mackay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So
what are those complications, just to clarify, if you were in that system, low input, lower yield? You're talking about an issue with the mill. What's the issue?
Well, the first issue is with the harvesters. They don't want to cut low yielding cane because they get paid on per tonne, and we pay for the fuel for the harvesters. So we're going to have to pay a little bit more for fuel. The contractor's going to want more money per tonne to harvest the cane.
And you have to compensate that.
Well, yes.
And in Ingham, the harvester might just say, look, we're not going to do that block. It's not worth it for us.
There's blocks. Because in the Herbert last year, we had a very bad year with a late finish. And there's a lot of very low yielding blocks that I don't think will be harvested. Like the harvest contract says, we won't cut it. That's it. Straight across the board. So those blocks, that farmer will have to make a decision. He's fertilised it because of the weather conditions. Most of that fertiliser's gone somewhere up in the air or through the soil, or it's gone. So he's got to make some hard decisions, but it was his decision to return that crop as it was. But the mill relies on throughput once they don't get a certain level of throughput, they become unviable. And as soon as they're unviable, it affects and close. You never get them back again. I've never seen a mill restart once it's shut down.
Has there been many mills shut down? And
Yes,
been
over the years, yes.
It's been the
Up and down
trend
the
over
coast
the last
everywhere.
40 years. Mills have shut. The local mills, and you get more regionally sold. Like the dairy industry, remember when it was deregulated? You had consolidation of the factories. I think the smaller factories all disappeared, same sort of thing.
And if the mills are getting less throughput, well, they're not going to reinvest in their mills, so their reliability comes a horrible problem, especially when the sun's out and we can't harvest. The mill's broken down.
Maintenance.
Yeah, because there is a
Lack of.
lot of stuff happens inside a sugar mill, and if the maintenance is not kept up to speed, it'll break your heart.
Who owns the mills?
Well, in Tully, Kofco owns it, which is the Chinese government.
Herbert Wilmar is a Singaporean-based company.
Mackay's part owned by the growers, and a lot of the mills used to be some of them used to be grower owned, but mainly now they're third party. Sugar industry around the world, it's a big international industry,
Did that happen in your time, the internationals?
Yes.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
I wasn't too happy at all.
But see, they guys don't get paid a premium for regen sugar,
No.
even though it gives you less diabetes risk. No, I'm just kidding. But they're not getting paid a premium for it. I mean, they're doing it, one, they want to balance between the environment and production, but two, they get the agronomic benefits, I guess, and the economic benefits.
One of the things that I think we all miss out of this is, for me, as I've gone down the road of regen, less working, better soil conditions, better soil health, I've ended up with less work and a better lifestyle with the same income or improved income. And I think as farmers, we have to look at our own hours and we have to look at our lifestyle. If we can, as farmers, improve our lifestyle and mental health, that's got to be a win-win.
And you can't put a price on that.
You can't put a price on it. It's very hard to
Are
value.
you saying you're enjoying cane farming, Alan?
I do, yes, I do. I'm probably getting to the end of my age. I'm at the long end of the stick, but
But the friends you've made.
yeah,
True.
and stimulating.
And the networking and the brainstorming that happens, especially after we've had a couple of beers, it can be dangerous.
Which will be happening from tonight until Friday. But we're not at Cairns, so you can't go to the casino.
Yeah.
this time.
I tell my husband that's what we do when I go away.
So I guess there's these broader issues like seasonal timing of rain and the industry challenges of supply of cane and processing of cane and contractors, how many are around, are they shrinking and all that. There's all these other forces that are influencing your soil health decisions and the region and changing the farm system.
One of the things I see for a problem for us is, soon as everyone talks multi-species, they jump on the internet and there's a million temperate varieties out there that you can plant. I actually think we're looking in the wrong place in North Queensland. We should be looking at Asia or more of the tropics for our species. I think that is a problem, but we probably need investment to bring that across, because the more of those we can bring across, the better our mixes will get and the better our outcome will get.
So you can't get them into Australia.
We don't even know what they are yet.
There's some legumes and things that the guys are using, but a lot of the time they're using like sunflowers and things, which are they're not tropical species, and they don't mind the heat, but the humidity is what towers them all up. So, when the guys first started trialling it, well, Simon down in Mackay, he tried to do sunflowers back in 2013 or something. They wouldn't even sell him the seed from Toowoomba. They said, "You can't grow them up there. We don't want to sell you the seed." But it's trying to get some climate appropriate species. So obviously Lawrence and some of the suppliers are looking into it, but there's not a lot of
It's a trial and error
Yeah.
thing, and that's this whole regen in the sugar industry. It's no silver bullet. It's work in progress, and I think there's no developed package. It's you have to work through it to what suits you, and I think it'll just grow in time and get better and better.
because it's a new farming system.
Correct.
You guys are developing a new farming system for the 21st century.
Yep.
You know, but I guess it takes time, and they need, you need support. Well, you're supporting each other, but seed mixes is the key part of it. I mean, the seed industry itself's growing so rapidly. Can they supply the farmers? That's one of the choke points. As you know, around Australia, everyone's trying multi-species. Well, the seed companies are catching up.
Yeah.
So, and tropical seeds, well, it's not many people focusing on that.
Also, season length has a big factor on our soil health. Once we go to Christmas and we get an early wet season, you can't get on those paddocks to get any mixed species cover crops or any cover crops. So then we have to rely on herbicides to terminate the cane. So we spray that in January. And then we might come back in March, April, another spray. And then we get the ground ready and plant it. So hasn't had much of a break crop of any description. So therefore you're looking at less yield because the ground is just not rejuvenated.
And that's related to the system of harvest as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
Because you get a late harvest because there's how many harvests was there and how many is there now? There's been a big decline, hasn't there?
Alan, we're in the herb, you should know the figures.
I don't know exactly. I think we're back to about 55 or 50 harvesters, where 10 years ago there would have been 100.
Why?
Profitability, they need throughput. Like a machine 10 years ago, you'd pay $500,000. Now a harvester would be up around 1.1 million, 1.2 million. A haul out, I couldn't tell you the exact price, but
400-ish.
you'd be looking 400 for each. Average contract's got at least 3. So it's very expensive to stay in the game. And it's not something someone walks in off the street and starts up, where years ago they could. So now they just don't seem to be able to finance it.
And I guess the other thing is you might have areas, cane growing areas, that are underutilised because people might be working on farm or working at the mines. They don't have as much of their property under high production cane anymore. Like around Mackay,
There's a lot of
issue,
that.
but there'd probably be some of that up here. Yeah, and so that means that the harvest has got less high production blocks to do in a year, which means that we're going to get less cash flow to pay the bank for $3 million to set up.
Yeah, if we don't grow the cane through the mill, and the mill becomes a bit short on money, so they'll reinvest in the mill then and keep their maintenance up. So therefore, the season length goes out further. So therefore, the big cost is soil health because we can't get our cover crops in.
Yep.
And in the wet tropics, we can't really successfully grow any other crop and be guaranteed to harvest it and get a return off it. There's been a few ventures here and there.
Unless
and we're
like tree crops, but they need better drainage than the low.
Yeah, but something like in our fallow, it would be lovely if we could plant a 2-year crop and get some sort of a cash crop in there and get a little return.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that successfully you can go year in, year out, and you know you're going to harvest. So most of the time growers go straight back into cane with it's
a well
degraded soil really.
So really, you guys are making big efforts to change your farming system to look after the environment and also feed the world. You know, you're tackling this challenge, and at the same time, everyone else, the rest of Australian society, is expecting you to be a good environmental steward, and the government's hitting you with some regulations too, or some legislation which no other industry's got. So let's maybe just chat about that for a minute. So you guys are now legislated on your nitrogen and phosphorus fertiliser decisions
And audited.
and audited on it, and that's because of concerns of you living next to the barrier reef and everyone wants you to be environmentally friendly in your farming. But that also creates less flexibility sometimes in your management decisions.
In saying what you just said, that's a unique position, and that legislation's on us, but we have to compete in a world market. We don't compete in our local domestic market. It's a world market. Something's bought and sold at world price. So that makes it hard for us because we're not trading on an even field, which it's economically it's very hard to stay in that ballgame.
Has there been a decline in soil health and yield worldwide in the cane industry?
I couldn't really say. No.
I mean, the general trend is as you get bigger machinery and more modern stuff, you tend to knock the soil around.
Yeah, I would say so. I've heard like in Brazil, they just run over the whole paddock when they're harvesting it, and hopefully they'll never work out what's going on.
And Brazil, a lot of the
It's one
countries,
advantage we have got over them.
yeah, Brazil, a lot of their country is relatively new in farming, so I think that helps them a little bit. And better soils, probably.
Yeah, so you guys have got these regulations on you which prescribe, particularly for those two nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen, how you make your decisions. So with it was a long time developing those laws, and it's always hard. It's always problematic when you just give everyone a blanket legislation from Mossman to the Queensland border for cane, because they're all different soils and different climates. But basically, you guys have been lowering your fertiliser use anyway, or trying to make it more efficient. So you're under those regs. Do you guys stress about them too much, or are they something you're aware of them, but you're sort of staying well under them?
Yeah, I'm underneath the regulations. I don't think it was the right approach by the government. I think they would have been better off doing more trials and explaining and teaching growers
rather than regs.
rather than regulation or a big stick approach.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Alan will be the same as me. Have you no troubles?
I have no trouble staying under those guidelines.
Yeah.
But you have to work at it. It's not just
but you have to be confident to make some big decisions, and that's building your own ability to do that. Build that confidence up. Learning in different ways.
Yeah. But have
a lot more information you have to make a decision makes that decision making a lot easier.
Yeah.
So if you go in armed with information, it's a lot easier to head in the right direction. That's the right thing.
And I guess having the peer support that the Regen Cane network has help support each other through those big decisions.
I do get frustrated with. I can only talk about cane farmers. They don't tend to value information, learning, or paying to learn enough. I don't think as farmers we value that, where other organisations tend to value that further learning, where farmers don't seem to. Yeah, it's a struggle.
Is it because they're too busy to get there, or what do you think is behind that?
Good question.
A good question. I can't answer it.
Yeah, some will just bloody stubborn.
Don't want to change.
I think that with forced legislation, which we're under, people have got their back up because government's coming with a big stick, and that, if anything, has slowed some transition because people, when they're ordered they have to do this now, they've got their back up.
Yeah, the first stage of anyone learning anything in life, Nakala, is be engaged in the topic. But the key thing is positively engaged. Yeah. If I'm open to learning, if I'm positive about the topic, I'll open my arms up and start learning. But if I could be engaged and as angry as hell, I'm not going to learn anything at that point.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge, that regulation, when it's done poorly,
yes.
It does, yeah. Or you don't do it with capacity, like you always have some regs in life. But I guess, this is the big challenge, isn't it? You guys are the first cane industry in the world, really, where your nutrient management's regulated. Obviously in Europe they've got similar things for other industries, but it's also another challenge in going down the soil health bandwagon.
One of the game changers for me was control traffic and mounding. For some reason in the tropics, mounding, the soil really loves it. Even if you can't get a multi-species crop in, that soil just seems to have more biology because it's not getting anaerobic during the wet season. That's the only thing I can put it down to. Everything, because there is a lot of carbon put back into the soil. Too much, actually, probably not enough carbon to nitrogen ratio. When you're fallowing, and it just seems to be alive. That in that mound where you walk away from it and there's no life.
I saw something similar in Tasmania. In their pastures, they mounded up because it's just too wet.
Yep.
So you're going to be anaerobic in those.
Yes, well, we get anaerobic in the wet season, in our summer months when we're trying to grow fallow crops. And before, our fallow crops wouldn't grow in that time of the year. Now we have no trouble growing them. But it's the mound seems to be the secret, and control traffic is
air. Soils,
Yeah.
topsoils need air and
Yes.
for everything
Yep.
else to go. Air, water and plant roots.
and they're not anaerobic, so they're
Yeah. So thinking about it, like with the things you've gone through, you guys over the last few years to change your soils and the farm systems over, what's the big first couple of steps you think people need to really tackle to turn soils around in the tropics to go down this regen path? What's the big?
Well, definitely sort your row spacings out,
Yeah, just to control that traffic.
and that's a pretty simple thing to do.
it is as simple, but it's probably the biggest roadblock because we're on roughly a 7-year cycle. Well, I am. So it's 7 years before a block gets replanted after it's returned all those years, then has a fallow. So it's the decision I make now, I don't finalise for 7 years.
You won't know how
So
good the
it's
decision
very,
is.
very long term. You don't make these decisions lightly because you haven't got enough years in your lifetime. Like to do five cycles is nearly a lifetime of farming.
So, Al,
basically.
before this, what was your crop cycle? 4 returns? Or?
Probably 4 returns, yeah.
Yeah.
4 returns.
So your soil health has meant that you can have more returns.
Yeah.
Which means you're more profitable.
And more
There's not as
consistent,
much,
yeah.
input.
Yeah, and that's where it all starts to kick in. And like I was saying earlier there, like with our controlled traffic, Al, sometimes we're harvesting when we shouldn't be.
Oh,
But
correct.
that's what we can, and then we need to get that
Especially
off.
the wettest part of the
So we're actually being detrimental to the paddock, but it's looked after us, and
Yeah.
so it's
But these are big decisions. These first couple of decisions are the big ones, and they're made. You have to make them in complexity. There's always stuff going on, uncertainty of seasonal change in rainfall, and you won't know whether that decision was the right one for 7 years, which is the challenge. When you make any decision, you got to do the right thing.
And there is a phase in this whole thing. Is a phase 1 and a phase 2. That first 7 years in transition, you have to go and disc everything out, then remound it, rip that paddock up because the interspaces, nothing lines up. So you have to start
Set
with a
everything.
blank sheet. So for 7 years, you got a lot of work ahead of you to achieve what you want. But when you go into the second phase, that's where it simplifies. You're starting to go back into all your control traffic that's been under control traffic for 6 or 7 years.
You've improved the soil.
The soil structure is improved. That's when the big advantages come. But that's 7 years down the road. It's a long wait, 7 years.
How long have you been doing it?
Since 2009, I started. So what's that? 14 years.
So you're starting to feel the lifestyle changes. That's
Oh
what
yeah, I've definitely got a lifestyle change. Oh, I
You have
bet.
to drag him off the fishing boat.
Yeah. I'm in third reverse.
What about the reef credits? Do you want to just touch on
I
that,
guess
David?
this is the thing. The guys, as Alan's mentioned, they're in a world market, but they have more environmental regs than other producers in other countries. I guess is a summary of it. And so, there are obviously different ways the government tries to support cane farm or any farmers. Really, one of them is regulations, which sometimes
Support.
don't necessarily do the supporting that they need to. But then you've also got things like the new market-based mechanisms, like create a product, an environmental product. And in the case of cane, they've got these reef credits, they call them. So the guys can get paid to lower nitrogen use, and that itself is a kind of environmental product. You're reducing potential emission. So they're selling that to the corporate commercial market, to Qantas and other companies that want to offset their carbon neutrality, make themselves carbon neutral. So I guess there's an opportunity for some of them to get a bit of money in the door to help make some changes with that. But we were having a chat, Ray. There's obviously it's not all skittles. There's pros and cons to everything, including this market-based tool.
Yeah, I've stayed away from any carbon exchange things or anything like that. I just believe if I'm going to build the carbon, I'll put it in my soil and I'll get the advantage of it myself. I still can't get my head around that I can do a good job and get paid for it, and then someone gets a credit, and to me, they're just passing the buck. Or
It's problematic, isn't it? A lot of this.
Yeah, if I build my carbon, well, yeah, I'll
I'll
get paid for it. And
you're making the big changes. Yeah, that all of us need to make the big changes. We have little businesses. You guys know I travel a lot. We're trying to make sure we do the right thing. But, it's how can we support farmers as well.
For Ray and I, we don't qualify for 99.99% of those things because we've been at it for too long. We're way below the
why don't we give
benchmarks
you a
already.
bonus? Why don't they get a bonus for like employee of the month? You see at Woolies.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Doesn't happen in this industry.
No, you give them like farmer of the year, and you give them a bonus for already doing it. So.
And carbon credit, trading carbon credits, I'm very frightened of them. At the tropical north, it's very hard for us because everything cycles that hard because our rainfall, temperature, and humidity cycles that hard. It's very hard to make carbon consistently.
Well, it'll bounce.
Yes. Yeah. And I also think that in the future, the government could legislate that we have to supply carbon credits to cover our own farming activity. That's what worries me. And once you sell those credits, very hard to get them back.
Yeah, you'd have to buy credits on the market to make yourself carbon.
Correct, and you've lost 30% each way.
But because you manage your landscape, you have the opportunity to grow your own carbon credits for yourself,
yes.
And that's the risk.
And if I can grow my organic carbon, that's a that's a win-win for me anyway.
Yeah, I see a complexity, and I'm not saying what's right or wrong with these reef credits. That if you're being paid to reduce your nitrogen and
potential emission, potential emissions,
and you get reduced yield, that's going to go into the whole mix of the maintenance of the mill and the contract that's being available. It's quite complex, isn't it?
That's why that in doing that, they haven't taught that person what they have to do to keep their yield the same. There is a lot of capacity that we invest in other things like your pH has to be on the ball.
No aluminium.
Yes, you got to keep your aluminium like most tropical soils up here. We've got high aluminium, so we got low calcium.
To put it in perspective, Alan, you can have 40-50% aluminium. Cane will still grow. So if anyone's listening to this podcast from other parts of Australia, 10% is usually high for a lot of
fine. You would grow a crop.
Yeah.
So
cane is very tolerant, but you've lost that margin of performance each time. So you have to get all those ducks in a line before you can start really reducing.
But I guess, Nakala, your point is that, so there's opportunities for these environmental products because that's really what you're doing. The guys are growing it, creating it, and then selling it. But if it risks yield reduction by doing that, you've got a bit of money from selling reduced nitrogen. But if it's risked the production of cane in the long term for the mill, that has these side effects. So if you just do that as the only policy, just create market products everywhere, then that on its own is going to end up with all kinds of problems.
You can see how that flows on till no maintenance of the mill, longer season, no soil health. It's just a big.
So education and capacity building has got to be the foundational strategy of any community change over going regenerative.
I'm flying Qantas on the way back. I'll have a talk to them.
Yeah.
It's so true, isn't it? That's the importance of these regenerative cane farming forums because we've got to keep educating people.
I hate to break it to you. Qantas, they're only shifting the buck by buying credits.
I know. And that's why I said I'm not sure what I agree with. It's very complex. I like that big organisations that are making squillions of money are helping farmers.
They're not doing it out of choice.
No, right, okay. But they need systems and practice change as well, absolutely.
I've got a new podcast for you to listen to about the whole carbon market. It's worth having on this. I'll get it to you.
Yeah.
No, so it's it. I guess going down the regenerative path, you guys, it opens a big can of worms in terms of management decisions. But has it been rewarding? Has it been worth the
Oh,
effort?
and it's made farming that much more exciting again,
Yeah.
rather than just doing this same old industry standard what Mr. Incitec tells you to do or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
You're using your own brain, you're thinking and having trouble working something out. You get on the phone and ring Alan or
Yeah.
someone else in the industry, and
So it's at a community level, it's more enjoyable too.
Yeah.
Just
yeah,
the farmers.
absolutely, yeah.
But it's not just us as farmers learning. The agronomy staff's learning. Everyone, the on-sellers are learning. Everyone's learning out.
Extension guys like me.
Like extension staff, exactly. Because we're on the same
Even
road.
Nakala,
Because
she's still learning.
I'm learning lots.
Snake
that
Handley.
that information was still growing.
Yes.
We're developing it as we're travelling. So everyone's in
That collective knowledge is critical.
yes.
And that's the only way that you guys in the cane industry are going to pull this off. It's not going to happen if a couple of you sort it out and no one else comes along. Unless the whole industry does it together, it's not going to happen.
Well, it's gradually changing. Like in this district, 5 years ago, if you saw a multi-species crop, there were very few. Now, normally this year they've had haven't planted much because of weather, but last year the district was covered in multi-species. Covered.
I mentioned that when I was going up to Catalyst. There's multi-species crops along the road.
Yeah.
I said, isn't this good to see? I said, I can remember about 5 or 6 years ago at Catalyst, I was up on stage and I said, watch this space. This is the next thing coming, multi-species cover crops. And you drive around and everyone knows that's
the wet tropics is going green and gold. So I'd been coming up about 8 years doing extension with you guys, and I'd never been to the Barrier Reef for a holiday. I'd never even been out there, so I thought I'd better go out there because
before it's gone.
it's all fun. Yeah, it's all fun, and it's all been funded by Barrier Reef money, so you can't see what it is. So I went out for the day, and coming back from the snorkel excursion thing,
It was still there.
it was still there.
Beautiful and pristine.
Yep.
I bet.
And there was a talk too from one of the young ladies, about the environment and all that. And I said to her, I said, what do you do outside of this gig? And she goes to Townsville a fair bit for work on some water thing. And she said, I've noticed. I said, what do you do? I said, I do a bit of stuff with cane farms. She said, what's those yellow plants growing now? So she's been driving from Cairns down to Townsville off and on for years and noticed more yellow flowers in the paddocks. So, that's someone who has no, really deep understanding of cane. She just sees cane fields. Yeah. But she noticed that there's more yellow being planted. So there's this change happening.
And I think there's that much more work to do. I want to look seriously into intercropping. To grow a bit of nitrogen in crop.
I see a cane crop and it's so thick, so you're going to have to pull the spaces out. Tell me.
Well, I'm on a dual road, which is on 1.9 metre centres, and my rows are 500 apart. So I'm hoping between those two dual rows, I'll be able to grow something in there. There's a lot to nut it out.
There's a window of opportunity.
There's an opportunity.
Tackle it. But again, it doesn't have to be right through to the end of the cane cycle.
No, just a couple of months worth.
And there's a thing like at the Regen, there'll be one of the demonstrations be by Dr. Danielle Walker, and Danielle does a lot of biomass sampling to try to work out what fertiliser reductions we can achieve without being detrimental to our crop. And that's something that they're still learning. Like they're sampling sun hemp, and what they thought was the nitrogen percentage, now they're finding it a bit higher, and just plants like that, different things. It's still work in progress. We're not stationary, it's work in progress. And people like Danielle have got a massive amount of information they can throw into the pool that we're all looking for. Like Ray's looking for it, I'm looking for it. How much can we reduce when we got a crop of X, like 36 tonne per hectare of biomass out of a multi-species? How much? And those multi-species are very hard to biomass sample because they've all terminated at different times. Like they'll start seeding some at 4 weeks, and there's stuff at 3 months and it's still growing and hasn't seeded. And
so estimating potential nutrient supply. We tried looking at the Haney test too, and then we threw the Haney. the guys are trying all different ways to try and work this out, but it's going to take time.
Yes, very hard.
14 years, 2 cycles.
And if you take a soil sample, that only gives you a picture of how much N at that time. It doesn't give you a picture of what's going to be available.
The 10 million bacteria that are actually doing the job.
That's correct.
The equilibrium of nitrogen in there, which the DNA test has potential to help us with, but it's an early technology still.
So that's something we have to, we're all in the pool trying to work out, and I think that's a long way down the road, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and DNA will change, it is changing the game, so, and the guys...
Game changer,
But it's early, still, the R&D's ahead of us, I guess.
Yeah.
We're even talking
But we're
about
driving R&D.
You guys are driving the R&D.
You are, because that's exactly what you're seeing. In your soil, you've got good aggregation, and you know that there's high labile carbon there, but your carbon percentage probably isn't reflecting that in your soil test.
But
so
there's a change in the functioning of that carbon. You're going from quinoa, low GI, paleo stuff to spring rolls with chili sauce, like it's the way
in the
bistro.
Homemade chili sauce.
It's just changed the way the bistro's functioning. You know, it's the same amount of food going out, but the party's changing a bit. Everyone's got out of their seat and they're starting to do a few things.
Wow. Well, I'm very excited about the next 2 days at the Regenerative Cane Farming Forum and all the things we're going to learn. I think this has been a great catch up. There's going to be a few more little interviews along the way, so look out for them. But thank you, everyone. I think this has been a great conversation, and I hope people get lots from it.
Please follow the Biological Farming Roundtable podcast. Share it with your friends and networks. I'm Nakala Maddock, and I work at Nutrisoil, a liquid biological fertiliser made from a big worm farm whose purpose is to empower farmers to produce life-enriching food.